Hey, and welcome to the channel, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is part 2 of our series on how to get our 4 degree of freedom motion simulator set up with the software. And this is related to using a 2x32 Sabertooth motor controller for the 2 front motors of our 4 degree of freedom motion sim. They're the motors that control our pitch, roll, sway, heave, etc. And we're also using 2 IBT-2 motor controllers, and one of those is used to control our surge axis and one of those is used to control our traction loss axis. Now I just want to wind back, guys, to the previous video where I did the overview of the actual electronics box, showing the electronics box, talking about the 2x32 Sabertooth versus using IBT-2s, and talking about my setup now running that with a battery. I just want to talk about that battery setup, okay, and I want to elaborate a little bit more on that before we dive into the software setup, because upon reflection of talking about that and doing a little bit more reading, I just wanted to reiterate what I said in that first video, that you indeed would probably be better off really using a decent proper battery charger instead of power supplies like I'm using at the moment. And that would be to the effect of using a truck battery recharger, because that will keep up a lot better with a large battery like the large battery I'm using, a 720 cold crank amp 12 volt lead acid battery with a 75 amp hour capacity. Now I'm using, as shown in the previous video, 2 power supplies wired in parallel. They're 50 amp power supplies. Wiring them in parallel gives me 100 amps that I'm able to feed to that battery. Well, that's probably over the top, and I could actually disconnect one of those power supplies and I could just use one of those power supplies to connect to my battery, so it's always charging my battery, in lieu of using what would be a better setup, which would be actually a truck battery charger. You wouldn't need 2 power supplies like I'm using. I'm actually going to disconnect one of those power supplies. I'm not going to run my power supplies in parallel anymore. So after this video, I'll be disconnecting the power supplies to each other, and I will just be running one power supply to the battery. So basically, like shown yesterday, the negative side of the power supply will run to the negative battery terminal. The positive side of the power supply will run to the positive battery terminal, and then I'll run a 8mm gauge wire from the positive battery terminal to the positive power input of the Sabertooth, and I'll run a 8mm negative wire from the negative side of the battery to the negative side of the power input of the Sabertooth 2x32. So I just wanted to clear that up before we went any further. Okay, let's talk about the Sabertooth 2x32. So here's Dimension Engineering's website that I've got up here, okay? This is the Sabertooth 2x32. You should come to this website yourself. I will include a link in the description to the Dimension Engineering website, and do have a read through the information regarding the Sabertooth 2x32. Important stuff down here, guys, is under documentation down the bottom here, the described manual and some of the information here. Our Arduino libraries, very important, because you'll need to download these libraries to upload into your Arduino, so then your 2x32 Sabertooth is communicating correctly with your Arduino to begin with, okay? So you'll need to download, as well as some of this documentation here, also the Arduino libraries. You'll need to grab those. Now, the information for the Sabertooth can be found at the xsimulator.net website here, okay? Here it is here. Again, guys, I did include this link in the description in the last video. I'll stick it in this video as well. It'll be in the description, the link for this particular page at xsimulator. This is the tutorial for setting up a 2x32 Sabertooth to run with your motion simulator, okay? all the stuff that you need to be aware of and the steps that you need to go through to make this work are all found here, okay? So you need to read through this and you need to follow all of the steps on this page to set up your Sabertooth 2x32 to run with your Arduino Uno, okay? Very simple wiring, but there are a few things that need to be done. For example, the Sabertooth 2x32 and the 2x60 for that matter, they have dip switches on them, okay? Those dip switches, you can see here on the left of the image here of the Sabertooth 2x32 where it's got the main input, main power input, motor 2, motor 1, etc. To the left you can see the little dip switch set up here. Now this is tiny. Actually on the 2x32 it looks quite large here, but on the 2x32 it's very small, and it's also got some shrink wrap over the top of these switches, which is quite tricky to get off. I needed to get a little pin, and I actually had to get my wife to, because she's a little bit more finer than what I am with my hands, etc. I got her to get a pin and peel off the tape, if you like clear cellophane tape or like a heat shrink. It's put over those dip switches. You need to get that off even first before you can even adjust your dip switches. And for me to actually adjust those, I needed to use a needle to actually be able to adjust them. They were too fine to actually get my fingers in to adjust the switches on the dip switches. And you'll need to set up the dip switches as shown here when you get your 2x32 Sabertooth. Okay, there's your wiring diagram for how you'll set up your pots. Very similar to the IBT-2s, you'll have pot 1 going to the AO analog signal on the Uno, and you'll have pot 2 for your second motor. So this is our front motors. For example, pot 1 might be a left motor, pot 2 might be a right motor. They need to go to AO and A1 on the analog side of the Uno. And then you've just got 2 wires that run out of the Sabertooth, okay, and you'll follow this wiring diagram here that go into your ground and pin 13 S1. So S1 on the Sabertooth into pin 13 on the Arduino, and the 0 volt ground on the Sabertooth 2x32 into the ground on the Arduino Uno R3. Your positives and grounds from your pots, you'll follow exactly the same as you would follow for IBT-2s. They need to be powered from a 5 volt source that you can take from your Arduino, and they need to be grounded to your Arduino as well, your pots. Okay, so you need to follow through those wiring schematics to get this to work. Then you need to come through your initial setup. That's all listed here. You'll need to make some changes to your baud rate that will be programmed in the Sabertooth 2x32. To do that, you'll need to connect the Sabertooth 2x32 to your computer, okay? You'll need to download the software, the described software. That can be found here, back on the Dimension Engineering. It's described PC software. So where we see software here down the bottom, where our red stuff is, under the Arduino libraries here, guys, described PC software, you'll need to download that, and you need to download that onto your computer. Then the 2x32 Sabertooth comes with its own mini USB port, and it comes with a cable, okay, when you buy it, and you'll need to plug that cable into your computer, and you'll need to then make some changes as described here via that described software that you have downloaded from the site. All right, so you just read through this and then you set up your 2x32 using those steps. Now for your IBT-2s, all right, again, here's the page to the Rufus Doofus tutorial on how to set up 2 motors, guys, with using IBT-2s, all right? I use IBT-2, so I use the IBT-2. This has all the steps, guys, here of what you need to do, once again, to set that up, as well as all the schematics needed, okay, for how the pots and how the IBT-2s need to be wired to, all right, here we go, to your Arduino Uno R3. Now, there's also Arduino libraries that need to be downloaded and then uploaded into the Arduino to communicate with SMC3 utilities. All of that information is on this page. Where to download SMC3 utilities, where to download the Arduino libraries, okay, etc., are all on this page. You need to carefully read through this page and get your head around the stuff that you need to do to get your stuff all wired up. All of this information is actually on my channel playlists under the electronics setups, okay, and under software setups, where I show step by step going to the Arduino website, getting the correct Arduino code, the libraries, how to upload that into your Arduino, how to set that all up. You'll need to go to both of these pages. You'll need to spend some time reading through the steps that you need to undertake to set this all up to work with your motion sim. Now, if you simply cannot spring for a Sabertooth 2x32 because it's just out of your budget and you are going to use 4 IBT-2s, okay, no problem. You just wire up your IBT-2 second Arduino the same as you wire up this one, okay? You're basically just doing this schematic here twice, all right? You'll wire one Arduino up like this and you'll wire your second Arduino up just like this, all right? So you've basically got 2 Arduinos and two IBT-2s going into each Arduino. That's all you need to do. The magic to get them actually then working in SimTools, that's what happens next, and that's all in our interface settings, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. Okay, let's move on to how to get the correct settings set up in SimTools game engine. So guys, I am assuming you have SimTools. Obviously you are going to need SimTools to be able to set this up. Once you have installed SimTools, you'll need to open Game Engine, so not Game Manager, open Game Engine, and you're going to be presented with this screen. Down the left hand side here guys, you've got Home, Access Assignments, Interface Settings, Output Testing and Tools. We are focusing on interface settings, so you'll click on this. Okay, this is where we set up all of the information that SimTools is going to need from our motor controllers, okay, their location via the Arduino Uno R3s, etc. Now, what we deal with once we're in interface settings is then we have different interfaces within interface settings along the top here, okay? So this basically means that you can have, multiple Arduinos all under different interfaces, all with motor controllers set up to them. So I guess at the end of the day, you could have like a staggering amount of motors set up running in SimTools because you've got 6 interfaces. For us, we will be using 2 interfaces, all right? And we'll focus on interface 1 and interface 2. And we'll be setting interface 1 and interface 2 up to communicate with our Sabertooth 2x32 for argument's sake on interface 1. That's how I've got it set up, so I'll take you through the steps, assuming that you'll probably spring for a Sabertooth 2x32. If you're not going to do that, don't panic, because it's basically going to be exactly the same for IBT-2s. But for my setup under interface 1, this is communicating with my Sabertooth. Interface 2 is communicating with my 2 IBT-2s. Okay, let's start with interface 1. We'll select interface 1, and along the top section here, all we need to change here, we don't have any presets, so that will just be as it is. But under interface type here, you're going to make sure you select serial. Okay? And then we'll move down into the serial output section next. All right, now your COM port setup here. This is going to revolve around what your Arduino is being seen as under Device Manager. Okay, whatever your Arduino is that's controlling your front 2 motors, all right, because that's what interface 1 controls with my setup, is my front 2 motors, and my Arduino is seen in Device Manager on my computer as COM port 4. When you initially set up your Arduinos to be seen on your computer by a device manager, you need to make a note of what their COM port locations are, because that needs to be put in here, all right? So for me, my Arduino that's connected with my Sabertooth is in COM port 4. That's the USB port that it is seen at. So your bits per second, guys, are set up at 500,000 bits per second. Your data bits you set up at 8. Parity is just set up at none. And stop bits are set up as 1. Moving down to the next line here, your output bit range you set at 10. Your output type is binary, okay? Not decimal, not hex, but binary. All right, moving down, this is really important. Your output rate here, guys, needs to be set at 10 milliseconds. And this is the magic here that basically makes all 4 motors talk to each other and talk to sim tools. This code has to be put in exactly as you see this, exactly like this. Now, this took me quite some time to work out the correct code for interface 1 and interface 2 to finally get my second 2 motors, my traction loss motor and my surge motor, actually working with sim tools. And this was even after putting the feelers out to the xsimulator.net community and asking them how the code should be set up for 2 separate Arduinos within sim tools, and I got all sorts of conflicting information and none of it worked. It was through trial and error, and this took me about 3 hours to finally work out, and it was just basically experimenting and trying different codes in the second interface to find out the correct code. So then my second 2 motors were seen in sim tools. My first 2 motors kept working no problem, but when I'd go to try and test under output testing my second 2 motors, I couldn't get any movement out of my sim. It's because the code was not correct. Right, now this will be the same as if you are using 4 IBT-2s instead of 1 Sabertooth for your front motors and 2 IBT-2s for your rear motors. This code will need to be the same, okay? The big thing needs to be that it reads the A axis 1A, B axis 2A on interface 1, and on interface 2, it's also A axis 1, but then it's B, and then it's B axis 2B. These are the things that need to change. I got told that interface 1 should be A axis and B axis. Interface 2 should then say C axis and D axis. Tried all of that, wouldn't work. Then people said, oh, try running 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. I tried all these things and nothing would work. It wasn't until it was set up exactly as you see here that I got it working. Now, it's really important, guys, once you have set all of this information up with your code, etc., before you go to interface 2, make sure you hit save, okay? Otherwise, when you go to interface 2, you're going to lose all of that information. So once you've set up interface 1, press save, press OK, then move on to interface 2, get it all set up, which we're about to do, and then before you close your game engine down or exit interface 2, make sure you save this as well. Let's go back to finishing this first part off. So this is how your interface 1 needs to look, okay, with that code exactly like that, whether you're using a Sabertooth 2x32 or whether you're using IBT-2s for your front motors. That's the code you need. And these are all the settings, right, that need to be set up under interface 1. The only difference that you may have is your COM port location may vary from mine, right? Interface 2, all of this is the same. All of this, again, your COM port location should be different It shouldn't be saying COM port 4 because this represents your second Arduino Uno. It should be in under a different COM port location. And again, that is going to be dependent on how your device manager under Windows, which USB port that's seeing your Arduino plugged into. Whatever that is in device manager, you need to select that here, okay? As far as your bit rate, your bits per second, again, guys, that's 500,000. Data bits are also at 8. Parity is at none. Stop bits at 1. Output bit range at 10. Output type binary once again. Make sure your output rate's set at 10 milliseconds, and then this is the code you need in interface 2. It's exactly the same as interface 1. This is different because it's saying 1B and 2B instead of 1A and 2A. That's the change. You should be able to set this up. You should be able to monkey see this and monkey do this exactly as I've done it, and yours should work. That's all I can say, guys. And that is it for this video. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. I hope this has helped you get your setup set up if you're up to this step. Now, until I see you guys in the next video, whatever that may be, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and take it easy out there.